Hello everybody, welcome to your Pilates workout. My name is Alice. Today we're going to do a mixed ability class with various different options and progressions. So starting with your feet hip distance apart, knees are slightly bent, making sure that the rib cage is relaxed and that the shoulders are pulled down. Back is nice and straight and looking forward with your chin parallel to the floor. Taking your hands to your hip bones now, bending the knees a little bit more. You're going to arch the lower back and tip the pelvis forwards. And then from there, tucking the tailbone underneath, tipping the pelvis backwards. So just moving through these two positions, imagining that your pelvis is like a swing. And then just gradually making that movement smaller and smaller until you find the place which is right in the middle of the two positions. So here we should have a nice straight back and just a small natural curve in the lumbar spine. Placing your hands to your ribs now, breathing in through the nose, thinking of breathing laterally, so expanding the rib cage sideways into the hands, almost like an accordion. And then as you breathe out softly through the mouth, just narrowing the rib cage. So being careful not to lift the shoulders or the chest. Taking one hand down to your belly button now. The next time you breathe out, think of pulling the belly button through to the spine and engaging the abdominals. And as you breathe in, relaxing by about 30%. So we're always keeping that engagement. So you can imagine having a belt around your waist. And every time you breathe out, tighten the belt to the tightest notch. And as you breathe in, just releasing by about 30%. So just thinking now as well about your pelvic floor muscles. Every time you breathe out, thinking about really engaging all of the muscles and pulling everything up and in. Beginning our warm up now by circling the shoulders backwards, keeping the knees nice and bent. Incorporating the arms as well now. Just being careful that as you take the arms to the side, they're not behind the body. Making sure you can still see your fingers in your peripheral vision. Taking the shoulder rolls forward now, keeping the knees nice and soft. And then with the arms all the way up to the ceiling, to the side. So throughout the whole class, trying to think about that lateral breathing into the side of the rib cage and that engagement of the abdominals and zipping up the pelvic floor. Breath in now, and as you exhale, bending sideways from the waist and sliding the hand on the thigh, inhaling to come back to center. So changing the side each time, exhaling to bend and inhaling to come back up to center. If you wish, you can take your arms out to the side to increase the lever length, but if not, just keeping the hands where they were, just resting by the side of the body and sliding down the thigh. Imagine in this exercise that you're sandwiched between two walls, so you're not able to move forwards or backwards, just on the lateral plane. Every time you exhale, think about tightening that belt to the tightest notch, pulling the belly button through to the spine, and keeping your legs in a nice parallel position with a soft bend in the knees. If you have chosen to take your arms out to the side, make sure you can still see your fingertips in your peripheral vision. Moving with your breath. So moving on to some squats now. I'll just turn to the side to show you a bit better. Keeping your feet and your legs in a nice parallel position. Inhale to prepare. And as you exhale, bending the knees, sending the hips backwards and floating the arms so that the biceps are next to the ears. Having the back straight and at a diagonal position. And imagining that there's a chair behind you, so it's as if you're bending to sit down on the chair. Keeping your knees over your feet so that when you bend, they're not rolling in or outwards. And as you lift the arms, being careful to pull the shoulders down the back. So moving with the rhythm of your own breathing, always inhaling to prepare and exhaling to squat. Trying to sink a little bit lower into the squat, so really warming up those large muscle groups. And then this time you're just going to stay down in the squat and we're just going to pulse up and down. So small pulses, breathing, welcoming that heat in the quads and the glutes, trying to stay nice and low. And then coming back up to standing. Taking the same squat, but this time keeping the arms by the side. And as you come back up, we're going to lift opposite knee to arm. And bending and changing the arm and the leg each time. So working a bit here on balance and coordination. Keeping everything nicely in parallel. So continuing with this movement, and if you would like to add on and challenge your balance a bit further, the next time you lift the knee and the arm, open out to the side, close back to parallel, replacing the foot and bending. Moving on to the other side, lifting, opening out to the other side, closing back to parallel, and then replacing the foot. So just make sure if you've chosen this option that we're not moving the pelvis around, not twisting. It's just the leg and the arm moving independently. Warming up the feet now, just lifting one heel and the other, changing the foot each time. And then lifting both heels and dropping one heel down to the mat and then changing. So just pedaling through the feet, pressing one heel down and then the other. Sticking with this option if you like, and if you would like to challenge your balance a bit more, you can lift both heels at the same time and float the arms up to shoulder height as you do so. So exhaling to lift the heels and inhaling to lower, making sure that the knees are nice and straight. If you'd like to add on further, the next time the heels are up, bend the knees, open the arms to the side, and then straighten the legs still with the heels lifted, and then lower back down. So just lifting, keeping the heels high, bending the knees, opening the arms, and then taking the arms back to parallel, straightening the legs and lowering the heels and the arms down. Make sure that if you've chosen this option, when you bend the legs, keeping the heels high, make sure you're still keeping the back nice and straight. So we're not arching or sending the hips back. Think of sending the pelvis down rather than backwards. Keeping your fingers in your peripheral vision as you open your arms out to the side. One last time. And then just shaking out your feet. So just coming to the top of your mat now, still with your feet hip distance apart, knees bent. Beginning with the head, we're just going to start to roll down really slowly through the spine towards the mat, one vertebrae at a time. Head and the arms are heavy. And then placing your hands onto the mat, bending the knees even more and lifting the tailbone, still keeping the knees bent and engaging the abdominals to roll back up. Breathing throughout the movement, the head is the last to arrive, and rolling down again. So really trying to move slowly and articulate each vertebrae. If it's a little bit too much to go all the way to the mat, then just roll halfway down and roll back up again. Bending the knees as generously as you need to and keeping the legs in a nice parallel position. So making sure it's always the head and the shoulders to begin. Arms are nice and heavy and loose. And then as you place your hands onto the mat, bend the knees more and it's the tailbone that begins to lift, engaging the abdominals and then rolling up through the spine. Moving slowly and in your own time. And then the next time we're all going to meet in a crouched position with the hands on the mat and walking out to all fours tabletop position. Setting yourself up in all fours position now with the hands underneath the shoulders and the knees underneath the hips. Back is flat and the abdominals are engaged. Inhale, and as you exhale, floating one arm up to the same level as the back, and inhale to replace the hand. Changing the arm each time. Inhale, elongating the arm and then floating it up. Going to do the same thing now, but with the legs. Think of elongating that leg before floating it up to the same height as the back, and then replacing the knee. Making sure each time you replace the knee that it's still hip distance apart in a nice parallel position. So now you can continue either with just the arms one at a time or just the legs one at a time, or for the full exercise, which is the Superman exercise, we're going to do opposite arm to leg. So really imagine that someone's pulling on your hand and your foot. So we're trying to elongate the body each time as much as we can. Making sure that you're still pulling the belly button through to the spine, protecting the lower back and keeping the back nice and straight. You can imagine that you have a glass of water on your back so that we're not tipping from side to side, trying to stay as stable as possible. And if you do have hypermobile elbows, just making sure that you're thinking about bending the elbows ever so slightly to not put any pressure on the joints. So this time we're going to do a little balance check here, try and hold this position, elongate the arm and leg, and then crunching the elbow to the knee and extending. So we're going to do this 8 times, crunch and extend, making the back nice and round as you bend in, pulling the belly button in and up towards the spine, and then extending as much as possible. So once you've done your 8 times, just changing over to the other side. And remembering you can always take an earlier option if this is feeling like a little bit too much. So you can do the crunch, for example, with just the arm or just the leg. Or you can leave the crunch out entirely and just carry on with the Superman exercise, changing the legs each time. Making sure it's always opposite arm to leg. And inhaling as you elongate, and then exhaling as you try to bring your knee closer towards your nose. So for another optional progression here in this exercise, we're just going to take the same balance that we had before, opposite arm to leg, and then opening the arm and the leg slightly out onto the diagonal and closing back into parallel. So doing this movement 6 times before we change onto the other leg, and trying to have the arm and the leg as straight as possible. It's a fairly small movement, so we're not going too far out onto the side, just onto the diagonal. We're replacing the hand and the knee, and then going onto the other side, balance check first, and then opening and closing. So looking to elongate one line from the hand all the way to the foot, and keeping your gaze towards the edge of your mat so that the neck is in a nice aligned position. Replacing the foot and the knee, and then tucking the toes underneath, sitting back onto the heels, rolling up through the spine, and just taking a few circles with your wrists just to get rid of any tension that you might have there from being on your hands and knees. And then coming back into an all fours position, gauging the abdominals and opening one arm out to the side. As you exhale, you're going to twist and pass the arm underneath the other, and then inhale out to the side again. So here we're going to keep the supporting arms straight, and we're going to try not to rock the hips back, so keeping the hips exactly where they are, aligned over the knees, and taking the gaze up to the ceiling each time you thread the arm underneath. Try to twist the body as much as possible without twisting the hips. Really working all of the muscles around the waist. Then once you've done 8 with this arm, just replacing the hand, extending the other arm out, shoulder height, and then inhale and exhale, passing the hand underneath, twisting the body, gazing up to the sky. Threading the arm underneath, twisting, keeping the hips completely still. Keeping the supporting arm straight but not locking out through the elbow. And just following the hand with the eyes. Keeping the movement nice and fluid and precise. And going with the speed and the rhythm of your own breath. Replacing the hand. Sitting your hips back onto your heels now, stretching the arms forward and taking a breath in child's pose. And then pushing yourself forward, coming into lying on your front. So in this position, we're going to have our hands underneath the shoulders, forearms are going to stay on the mat, and forehead's going to rest down gently. So pushing up onto the forearms, just lifting the upper back and the chest off of the mat, and then rolling back down. So all of the work that we do whilst lying in this position, try to imagine that you have a pin underneath your belly button, so that you're still keeping that abdominal engagement and always protecting your lower back. The legs are nice and heavy on the mat. And then you can continue with these rises with the arms on the mat, or alternatively you can take the arms behind you, hands next to the thighs, and imagine that somebody's pulling on your hands in order to pull the upper back off the mat. You might not go very high or very far, but that's absolutely fine. The most important thing is that you can feel the muscles in the upper and the middle back working. If you're feeling any pinching at all in your lower back, just continue the exercise with the forearms resting on the mat. Keeping the gaze down towards the mat so that the neck is nicely aligned. So on the next time, you're going to keep the back lifted, breathe, and then you're going to circle one arm up over the head and then back down to where it was. Circling the other arm now, reaching forward and then reaching the hand back. Trying to keep the back as lifted as it was before. So alternating the arms each time. Should be feeling lots of work in the upper and the middle back. If you have got any discomfort at all in the lower back whilst doing this, then continue with the arm movement, but just rest your head and your chest onto the mat. Taking a small break here, just resting your forehead onto your hands. If that already felt like enough work, we're just going to do the same thing again. If you'd like to challenge yourself further, you're going to lift the arms and the legs, making sure that the legs are straight. And then from this position, circling the two arms above the head and back. Breathing, being careful not to raise the shoulders up to the ears. Legs are nice and straight. Really trying to make the body as long as possible. Still thinking about that pin underneath the belly button. It's nice engaged abdominals. Really fluid movement with the arms. And resting down onto the mat. Stretching your arms out in front of you, keeping the fingertips on the floor and just lifting the palms. Taking some breath here. And then from here, rolling onto your back, bending the knees, feet are hip distance apart on the floor. And in this position, you should have just a small space between your lower back and the mat. So just a natural curve, enough space to fit a couple of coins. Engaging the abdominals now. And we're going to lift one leg up to tabletop position and the second. So here we want to try and close the gap between the lower back and the mat, lowering one leg back to the floor and the second. Starting with the second leg now, lifting and placing the feet back. So with this exercise, we want to try and keep the angle of the leg the same. So we're not bending the leg anymore or straightening. We're just lifting and lowering the leg in one piece. So this is level 1. If you'd like to challenge yourself a little bit further, take your arms up towards the sky. We start the same, lifting the right leg and then the left. And then we're going to extend the right leg and at the same time extend the left arm, come back to the middle, extend the left leg and right arm, coming back to center, and then placing the right foot back to the floor and the left. So starting now with left, lifting the right, extending right arm and left leg back to center, extending left arm and right leg back to center, and placing the left foot back and the right foot. So carrying on with this, so we're moving always in opposition, opposite arm to leg. Again, imagine somebody's pulling your foot and your hand, making yourself as long as possible and allowing the shoulders to sink down towards the mat so the arms are heavy in the socket. Keeping the abdominals engaged, the neck is nice and long. And just being really precise when you place your foot back onto the mat that we're not changing the angle of the knee. Trying to keep the rest of the body completely stable, so it should just be one leg and one arm that's moving at a time. Remember, you can always go back to the first level of this exercise if it's feeling like a little bit too much. And from here, you're just going to hug the knees into the chest, rocking from side to side, massaging the lower spine, and then pointing the feet up towards the ceiling. If you're able to, with the legs straight, but if not, just bending them slightly. From here, we're going to lower one leg, bend that leg, bring it towards the chest, lower the other. And as if you're on a bicycle, we're just going to really slowly start to pedal. So the key here is to try and elongate the legs as much as possible. Imagine someone's pulling your foot from above, and then as you lower your leg, pulling your foot away from you. Again, if you need to bend the legs, if that's pulling too much on the hamstrings, that's absolutely fine. Just do the same movement with the legs bent. And the same if you're feeling any discomfort in the lower back. Just do the exercise smaller with bent legs. Changing the direction now. So back pedaling. Trying to really find the length in the legs as you push the foot away from you and towards the ceiling. Breathing, pointing the toes and really trying to elongate the legs. Pulling down with the abdominals, pulling up with all of the pelvic floor muscles. Really strong center. Now bending the knees, holding onto the lower legs and pulling your nose up towards your knees, lowering down. Exhale, pulling in, pulling your nose towards your knees, and inhale, lowering back down. Again, exhale, lifting, trying to make yourself as small as possible, and lowering down. One last time, this time we're going to stay up, pull your knees towards your nose, shoulders down, no strain on the neck, and pulling in the abdominals. Keeping hold of the left leg now, stretching the right leg out away from you, and then stretching the left leg away. So this is our single leg stretch, taking your hand to the outside of the knee and the inside of the ankle. The pelvis nice and stable as you pull that knee towards you and stretching the other leg out as far as you possibly can. From here, it's your choice if you carry on with this version, or we can do a double leg stretch, straightening both legs as you take the arms up over the head and circling them back round. Taking hold of the lower legs, pulling the knees towards the face. Remember, you can always stick with the first option. And then from here, just allowing your head to lie down onto the mat, hugging the knees in and just rocking from side to side. Placing your feet back onto the mat, parallel, hip distance apart and fairly close to you. Just making sure you've got that nice space in the lumbar spine. From there, engaging the glute muscles, we're going to imprint the lower spine into the mat and then very slowly start to tip the pelvis towards you and lift the hips as high as you can. So peeling the back off of the mat, one vertebrae at a time. And when you reach the top, really slowly rolling down, placing each vertebrae back onto the mat. So starting each one of these shoulder bridges by first engaging the glute muscles, tipping the pelvis towards you, imprinting the lower spine, and then really slowly rolling up, if possible, to the shoulder blades, but just go to where you can. So you can think of your spine at this point like a string of pearls. So it's as if you're picking up a string of pearls, peeling one pearl at a time off of the floor, and then very slowly starting at the top, placing them back. Going really slowly, breathing deeply throughout this, engaging the abdominals, pelvic floor, and the glute muscles. Feel free to stay with this version of the exercise, but if you would like to challenge yourself a little bit further, the next time you arrive at the top of your bridge, extend your right leg towards the ceiling. From there, we're just going to lower the pelvis, but not all of the way, and then push straight back up again to the top of the bridge. So lowering the pelvis until it hovers just above the mat, and then pushing with the toes right back up to the top of the bridge. Inhaling as you lower and exhaling as you push back up. It's a lot of work for the supporting leg. You can help yourself here by pushing your biceps in towards the mat. Really lifting the pelvis higher each time. Changing legs now. So lifting the leg up and then lowering the pelvis, hovering above the mat. And as you exhale, pushing the hips back up as high as you can and lowering. Trying to keep the leg that's straight as still as you can. Remembering that you can always go back to the original shoulder bridge exercise if it's feeling like a little bit too much. Keeping the tailbone tucked underneath so that we're not arching in the lower back. And keeping the abdominals engaged throughout. And then from here, replacing the foot, lifting the hips up one last time as high as you can, and then slowly rolling back down, placing the hips back onto the mat, and just rocking the knees from side to side, just getting rid of any tension that you might have in the glutes. Grabbing hold behind the thighs now and just rocking yourself up to a seated position, stretching the legs out in front of you, flexing the feet, and here we can either have the legs straight or bent, and just making sure that the legs are hip distance apart and the back is nice and straight. Hands behind the ears, inhale to prepare, and as you exhale, twisting, and then inhaling, coming back to center. So we're doing 2 short exhalations as we twist, and really trying to twist from the waist. So it's going to be twist, twist, and inhale back to center. Twist, twist, back to center. If you'd like to, you can extend the arms to the side, increasing the lever length, but making sure that the movement is really coming from the waist and that the arms aren't moving around independently. Keeping the core nice and strong, shoulders pulled down. One last time. And then from there, just everybody bending the knees, placing the feet onto the floor and lifting up from the chest, and then pulling the belly button through to the spine, rounding the back. And again, inhale, lifting the chest. And as you exhale, rounding through the spine. Just going through this movement a couple of times. Last time, allowing yourself to sit back until the arms are straight, and then lifting the chest, making the back straighter. From here, just lifting one leg and placing the foot back onto the mat. Changing legs, so just straightening and bending. Keeping the core engaged And it's up to you whether you keep your hands behind the thighs or lift the arms off, making sure that the chest is staying nice and lifted, changing one leg at a time. It's moving with lots of control here, nice fluid movements, and no weight on the toes. You can either carry on with one leg at a time, or you can zip the legs together and try to lift both legs at the same time, making sure that the shoulder blades are still pulling down the back. Chest is lifted. So you should be feeling quite a lot of work in the abdominals here. If you're not, try pitching yourself backwards a little bit further. If you're feeling like it's too much work, if you're feeling the work in the hips or in the lower back, try and pitch yourself forward a little bit. And then from here, just folding over the legs, letting the knees roll out slightly and just hanging over in the middle, stretching out the back. Coming back now onto your sits bones, catching hold of the shins and bringing the legs towards you. Just going to lift the toes slightly off the mat, so doing a nice little balance here. Taking a breath in, hugging the thighs towards the chest, and whenever you feel ready, rolling back towards the shoulder blades and rolling back up. So we're going to try and not touch the feet onto the floor when we roll back up, so really engaging that core to find that position without placing the feet down. So trying to keep the thighs as close as you can to the chest and the back nice and round in that nice tight ball shape. This exercise is one that can take a little while to get the momentum going. And if you'd like to add on, when you get to the top in your balance, you can extend the legs and extend the arms before rolling back. Keep going with this one. Might not work for you straight away. It's a brilliant exercise for the core and a nice massage for the spine. Rolling back onto the mat now, stretching the arms and legs away from you, trying to make the body as long as you can, and then rolling on to your side. So setting yourself up in this position, stretching the legs away from you and making sure that they're ever so slightly in front of the body and the back is straight. You can rest the head into the hand, just make sure that you're not breaking the line of the neck here. If it's more comfortable, you can rest your head onto the bicep or even place a block or a pillow onto the bicep, whichever's more comfortable for your neck. Pulling the abdominals in and upwards, and just making sure that the chest and the shoulders are relaxed. With your hand that's free, you can either place it in front of you to help with stability, or behind the ear for a bit more of a challenge, or up towards the sky. We're going to begin here with some leg lifts, so lifting the top leg and then slowly closing back down. Trying to think about lengthening the leg before you lift it. And moving with resistance. Imagine that there's a thick elastic band around your ankles. Again, thinking about really reaching the foot away from you before you lift the leg. And now sticking the legs together, we're going to lift both at the same time. So try not to rock backwards or forwards. Again, imagine that you're stuck between two brick walls. And it might mean that the movement's very small, but that's absolutely fine. Making sure it's nice and fluid. Making sure that we're moving with the breath. So inhaling to prepare and exhale to lift the legs. So now keeping the top leg exactly where it is, nice and high, lowering the bottom leg and then bringing it up to touch the heel. So just lowering and lifting the bottom leg, making sure that the top leg stays exactly where it is, and trying to keep both legs as straight as possible. So this is the inner thigh of the underneath leg doing the work here. Lowering the bottom leg one last time, and we're going to start to make some circles with the top leg. So making sure as you're doing your circles that you're keeping the torso and the pelvis completely steady and still. It's just the leg that's moving. It's not to worry about how high the leg goes. What's more important is that you're elongating the leg and making the circles nice and even. Changing the direction now. So bringing the circles forward. Trying to keep the torso as still as you can. And then closing the legs, bending the knees so that the thighs are at a right angle with the body and flexing the feet. Lifting the top leg, making sure the shins are parallel, and then touching knee to knee, ankle to ankle. So lifting, touching the knees together and the ankles. So really working deep into the glute muscles here. Again, trying to be really precise when you touch knee to knee, ankle to ankle, and keeping the movement really nice and fluid. Taking care here to not rock the pelvis forwards and backwards. Bringing the shins parallel now, hip distance apart, flexing the foot, and we're just going to start straightening and bending the leg. So trying to keep the thigh completely still. The movement here is just coming from the knee. Probably starting to feel some heat in the glute muscles here. It's a good sign. It means we're working them. And from here, holding the thigh, breathing, smiling. If your leg starts to shake, it's absolutely fine. And then resting the leg down and just giving the glute a little massage. Pushing yourself up now, swinging the legs round, coming onto the other side. So just taking a moment here to set yourself up in this position, still able to see your feet in your peripheral vision, so your legs are slightly further forward than the body. Pulling the abs in and upwards and making sure that the neck is in a nice comfortable position, either resting in the hand or the arm. So we're starting again here by lifting the top leg, really pulling the leg away from the body before you lift it. Really trying to elongate the legs here and keeping the rest of the body completely still. Squeezing the legs together now and lifting both legs at the same time, trying to keep them as much as possible stuck together. You can use that front hand to stabilize and to try and minimize any rocking and rolling of the pelvis. Keeping the top leg up now and lowering and lifting the bottom leg, working that inner thigh. Trying to keep the top leg as stable as possible and not moving the body forwards or backwards. Keeping the breath even and the abdominals engaged. And then we're beginning again here with our circles. So no need to take the leg too high, just making sure that the circle is even and that the leg is stretching as far away from you as possible. Taking the circle in the other direction now. So really imagine that you're drawing a circle with that toe. Lowering the legs, bringing the thighs in towards the chest. Shins are parallel to each other, and then dipping knee to knee and ankle to ankle. Still making sure that that pelvis is as stable as possible so we're not rocking backwards or forwards. We're on the second side here now, so your muscles are already going to be a little bit more fatigued than the first side. So just keep going with it. Stay with me, breathe through it. And then stretching and bending the knee, keeping the knees hip distance apart. Try not to let any tension rise up into the shoulders or the jaw. And then holding that leg out in front, trying to keep the foot at the same height. Smile, breathe. And then lowering that leg down. Again, giving your glutes a little massage there. So now just slowly bringing yourself up to an all fours position, and extend one foot behind and tuck the toes underneath, engaging the abdominals here. And if you wish, you can bring the other leg back to join to come into a plank. So having a nice long line from your head all the way down to your heels, and making sure that we're not lifting the pelvis too much or arching the back. So for the next part, you can either lower one of your knees to half plank or stay in full plank, and you're just going to lift your right leg and lower. So lifting, trying to keep the leg as straight as possible, breathing, trying not to lift the hips, staying in that nice straight line. Remember, you can always place the other knee back onto the mat if it feels a bit too much. Changing onto the other leg now, just lifting and lowering. Making sure we're not blocking out through the elbows, keeping the abdominals engaged and the legs nice and straight. Taking the last breath here in plank, and then placing your knees back onto the mat, sitting back into child pose, resting your forehead onto the mat. So allowing the body to rest here, letting your shoulders sink down towards the mat, and trying to settle your breath. Taking the hands towards the feet now, and just letting the shoulders sink forward. So they're completely relaxed, not holding anything at all in the shoulders. So slowly rolling yourself up now, coming into an all fours position and stepping the right foot between the hands. Sinking the hips downwards and trying to have the front knee aligned with the ankle. Keeping your hands either placed onto the mat or bringing them up, resting them just above the knee. You can also keep the hands down and rest them onto a block as well if you have one. Place the hands back onto the mat now. It's your choice if you have the knee lifted or resting onto the mat. And then keeping the left hand planted, we're just going to open up through the right arm towards the ceiling. So really trying to turn your chest towards the ceiling without lifting your shoulders. Taking the hand back to the mat now, replacing the knee and changing over to come into a lunge on the other leg. So just adjusting your back knee if you need to. The hands here are either resting onto the mat, just above the knee, or onto a block. And remembering to keep the shoulders relaxed. Breathing deeply. And then placing the hands back onto the mat, lifting the back knee if you wish. And now we're going to plant the right hand and open up through the left arm, twisting the chest towards the ceiling. Place the hand back onto the mat now, lowering the back knee and bringing the other knee to join it, and then lowering on to lying on your front. resting the hand on the left forearm, bending the right knee, and then with the right hand trying to catch hold of the right foot and bringing the heel in towards the glutes. If it's not possible to reach the foot in this position, you can also use an elastic or a yoga strap to put around the ankle, or even a towel just to try and pull the foot towards the glutes. Releasing that foot now and moving on to the other side, resting your forehead onto your right arm and pulling that left heel in towards you. If you're not feeling a stretch here, try and tilt the pelvis forward slightly, pushing your hips into the ground. You should feel a nice stretch along the quads. Releasing that foot now. So just pushing yourself up to a seated position now, back straight, flexing the feet and stretching the legs out in front of you. If your hamstrings are feeling a bit tight, you can always bend the legs for this next stretch. So we're just going to sink forward just to as far as you can, whether that means your hands are on your knees or around your ankles, just wherever you can feel the stretch, and then allowing the head and the shoulders and the neck to relax. Breathing deeply. Remember, you can always bend the knees if that's pulling too much in the hamstrings. Take a breath in, try and inch the hands forward, even if it's just a millimeter, and then breathe out and relax. Breathing through the stretch. Remembering you can always bend your knees if it's pulling too much in the hamstrings. Making sure that the neck and the shoulders are relaxed. And then one last time, taking a big breath in, inching the hands forward just a tiny bit, and then breathing out, sinking into the stretch. Engaging the abdominals now and really slowly rolling back up through the spine, bringing the hands closer to the body, sitting up nice and tall. Lying back down onto your back now, placing the feet on the floor and crossing the left ankle just underneath the right knee. Reaching your hands through and grabbing hold of behind the right thigh. If you're not able to quite reach there, you can use a strap or a band to wrap around the thigh. Pull the legs towards you. The neck is nice and long. Crossing the legs over now, so placing the right ankle just underneath the left knee, and then clasping behind the left thigh, either with your hands or with a strap. Pulling the legs towards you, stretching out the glutes. Slowly releasing the legs now, and then extending the arms so that the hands are parallel with the shoulders, lifting the legs up to tabletop, looking over to the left and just allowing the legs to fall to the right. Closing the eyes and feeling that nice twist all the way through the body. Breathing deeply. Engaging the abdominals to bring the head and the knees back to center, and then taking the knees over to the left, looking over towards the right. Keeping the eyes closed, breathing deeply. If you're noticing any tension that you've been holding in the neck or in the jaw or the forehead, take a breath in, and as you breathe out, just letting those muscles relax and letting all of the tension leave your body. Turning the head over to the left now, bringing the arms together, coming into a fetal position, and then pushing up gently, really slowly with your hands, coming to a comfortable seated position. Cross-legged if you can, or if that's not comfortable, just come to a kneeling position or stretching your legs out. Just rolling the shoulders backwards, reawakening the body. Turning the head from left to right, reawakening the muscles in the neck. And then just gently dropping the head down and making some half circles. Head is nice and heavy, just circling from right to left, feeling that nice stretch in the back of the neck. Placing the hands on the mat in front of you now and walking your hands forward to where you can, whether that's with the hands down or the elbows or the head, just stretching forward and relaxing the back of the neck. Taking your hands over to one side, stretching through the side of that back body. And then coming back to the middle and walking the hands over to the other side. One last time back to the middle, and then really slowly rolling up through the spine, walking the hands back towards the body, floating the arms up to the sky as you inhale, and exhale, pushing the air down. And again, inhale, bringing the arms up, and exhale. One last time, lifting the arms, bringing the hands together and down to the heart. Well done, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class, and if you're interested in more classes and live sessions, follow me on Instagram. It's alicemay.pilates. See you soon.